Welcome again. In this session, we would be discussing the NET paper for 10 July 2016. We have already covered the set of first 20 questions. In this, we would be covering question number 21 to 42. Since the last question is a passage question, we will be taking all the questions together. Now, the first question here is a direct question based on the concept of political science and what are the fundamental duties. So, to answer this question, you just need to know the list of the fundamental duties that we abide by the constitution. So under the article 21A, you have the list of fundamental duties and you have these four. All of these are considered as a fundamental duty, that's to respect the national flag, to protect and improve the natural environment. It's a parent's responsibility to provide opportunity for education to the child and protecting the monuments and places of national importance. So all four of these would be correct. So answer would be 4. Next question is question based on political science related to current events, or I could say recent happenings. So Niti Aayog has been established in replacement to Planning Commission and it has been named as a National Institute for Transforming India. So it's a kind of national institution which is aimed at transforming India, and it's a think tank of scholars from different arena. So first of all, it's a think tank, that's correct. Now, what is a constitutional body and what is a statutory body? Constitutional body is a body which is enacted under the constitution. So I can say it is somewhat mentioned in one of the articles of the constitution. However, a statutory body is a body made by the parliament. So parliament can amend or modify that. So that's what is a statutory body. However, Niti Aayog is neither constitutional nor statutory. So the correct answer would be C and D. We would be taking a detailed session on Niti Aayog where we will be discussing all these in detail. However, this is important to note that is a second question that has been asked based on current affairs and political science this time. Next question. Which of the following are the core values among the institutions of higher education that are promoted by NAC? Now, when we took the session on higher education, we clearly explained there that the core values, aims and objectives of all the institutes, all the major institutes of related to higher education are important, and there we mentioned NAC. So this is again a direct question. NAC has 5 core values that it abide by. So the first is contributing to national development. The next is fostering global competence among students and teachers. Then is inculcating a value-based system among students and teachers. Then is promoting the use of technology, and finally is quest for excellence. So these are the 5 fundamental core values that NAC abide by. So here 1, 2 and 3 are correct. So the correct answer would be 2. Next question. The best way for providing value education is through. Now this question is based on the aspect of value based education. Therefore, the correct answer here would be mentoring or reflective sessions which are meant for value promotion or imparting value education. So the correct answer would be 4. This is a kind of again a direct question. This is a question which is based on a bit understanding and I can say it's a bit tricky question that has been asked this time. Now in this question, what is important here to understand is you have 3 levels: memory, understanding. Understanding is also known as explanatory, and then you have reflective, which is exploratory. So here what you are trying to do is you are trying to explore facts. So the main aim in reflective would be problem solving and scientifically analyzing the concept. So you have problem solving behavior and scientific analysis of the concept. That means what you are doing is you are critically analyzing the points that are made and discussed. So that is what is reflective. So C would be 4. So that is the only correct answer. However, let's understand what's the memory level. So memory level is you are taking the permission to understand or record important points that are being made during the presentation. So taking minutes or notes of what is important would be a kind of memory level exercise. And then is understanding or explanatory. When you are understanding, you are trying to discriminate between the examples and non-examples of a point. So this is what you can match with 1. So the correct answer here would be 3. So this was a question which was based on bit understanding, because most of the students got confused between reflective and understanding level. So it's very clear that understanding level is explanatory, however reflective level of cognitive interchange is exploratory. Next question. Which set of learners' characteristics may be considered helpful to design effective teaching learning systems? Now when I am saying effective teaching learning system, what do I mean by? I mean that I am trying to establish a system of learning where I can impart the best of the information based on the systems that I have. So I have the prior experience of learner with respect to subject. That is very important, because if I am trying to impart some knowledge, I must have an experience in that subject. The next is ability of the learner in respect to the subject. So does the person has the ability to learn that subject, or is willing to learn that subject, would again be important. Then you have his language background. So a person who is studying a subject in English cannot understand the same subject in Chinese. So that is again important to note. And finally, the motivational level of the individual student is the must. So I can say 1, 3, 4 and 6 would be the correct answer. That's 2. Now interpersonal relations with the family friends is not at all important, and interest of the student in the following the prescribed dress code. So dress code is not at all important. So the correct answer would be 1, 3, 4 and 6. Next question. Now here you have two statements which are explaining higher education in India. So you have the purpose of higher education is to promote critical and creative thinking abilities among students. So that's 100% correct. What higher education aims to promote is to give divergent thinking views or to provide creative thinking abilities, and these higher education abilities also ensure job placements. That's again correct, but we are not providing critical thinking abilities under higher education just for the sake of job placements. So I cannot say that this reason is a correct explanation for the assertion. Therefore the answer would be both are correct, but reason is not the correct explanation for this question. Next question. Now this question we already discussed when we were explaining the expected questions. So it's again the same national curriculum framework. You have the CCE, that's the continuous and the comprehensive evaluation system that we talked about. So it talks about evaluating cognitive and co-cognitive aspects with regularity at a regular interval. That's correct. Summative assessment means what is happening towards the end. So you are grading the final outcomes, that's summative assessment. Under formative assessments, you are trying to understand the students' understanding by means of quizzes and discussions. That's held between the summative assessment. So that's FA and SA that we talked about in the expected session. And finally, you have the norm and the criteria reference test. So that is, those are the tests and their interpretations which are based on certain groups and certain yardsticks. So so this would be, D would be 2. So 1 and 4 could be the probable answers. So 2 and 3 are straightforwardly incorrect. And then formative assessment goes with 4. So this would be the correct answer. So the correct answer would be A here. Next question. Select the alternative which consists of positive factors that contribute to effectiveness of teaching. Now when we talk about effectiveness of teaching, the first and the foremost thing is the teacher should be knowledgeable enough to impart the subject knowledge. So teacher's knowledge is a prior condition. Then good communication skill of a teacher is a must. If I know a lot of things in my subject but I am not able to communicate it properly, it's useless from a point of view of teacher. So good communication skill is important. And finally, teacher's competence in managing and monitoring the classroom is again very important. So I can say A, C and F are the correct answers. So that would be 4. Next question. The use of teaching aids is justified on the ground of. Now supposedly I am taking a class here, but this is a kind of audiovisual class itself. But however, to make this class further interesting, I can bring in animations. So for a classroom teacher who is teaching, he or she can bring in audiovisual aids, can bring in small snippets of stories or something to make or to engage students better. So the effective engagement would be the correct answer in this case. Now the next question, format of thesis writing is the same as a research dissertation. Now this is a very direct question which is based on research aptitude. Some of the questions on research aptitude were very direct like this. The next question is, in quantitative research paradigm, which of the following features may be considered critical? Now when I talk about qualitative research, there are 4 paradigms that we consider: phenomenology, ethnology, grounded theory, and case studies. Now under case studies, what I do is I take a specific case and I study it in detail. Then phenomenology is study of certain phenomena, ethnology is study across cultures, and then you have the grounded theory where you are trying to understand the bottom up evidences. So data collection with bottom up empirical evidence is what is done under grounded theory, and grounded theory is one type of qualitative research paradigm that we consider. So the correct answer here would be 3, that is data collection with bottom up empirical evidences. Next question. Which of the following list of statements identify the set that have negative implications for research ethics? Now it's important to note what we are talking here about is negative implications. Okay. Now what all things can negatively affect the research ethics? The first thing here would be, if I am citing studies without proper reference, that would be unethical, because I am referring to some document and I am not naming the person who has worked on it. So that's highly unethical. So 2 would be definitely the answer. Now 4 cannot be the answer. So the only choices can be 1, 2 and 3. A researcher critically looking at the findings of another research is something that you need to do for research. So it's not unethical. So this cannot be the answer. So 1 is there in the choice A. So this cannot be the answer. Now consider research findings are made the basis for policy making. That's again correct. Research findings can definitely be used for policy making. So this cannot be unethical. So again this cannot be the answer. So the only answer can be this. Now let's verify 4 and 6. Conduct of practitioner is screened in terms of reported research evidence. That is unethical, because research evidence has nothing to do with the conduct of the practitioner or his conduct with his peer group. And finally, both policy making and policy implementation process are regulated in terms of primary studies. That is incorrect, because preliminary studies cannot govern the policy implementation and policy making. You need to complete your research in order to work for it. So with basis of preliminary research, you cannot formulate a policy, and that is unethical. So the correct answer here would be 3. Next question. Now this question is given more or less to confuse. There has been a lot of information that has been propounded to confuse. The main element here is, what we need to focus on is just 2 things. First is the hypothesis that is formulated is child rearing practices do influence stress proneness. So that is the formulated hypothesis. Based on this data, you have a null hypothesis that has been propounded and that has been rejected at 0.01 level of significance. That means, since the null hypothesis is rejected here, you have the alternate hypothesis that is true, and the alternate hypothesis is true. That means the research hypothesis is accepted. So this hypothesis would be accepted, would be the correct answer here. We will discuss this more when we talk about the hypothesis and the various errors in hypothesis. The next question. Now this is a question based on what we discussed in the higher education class on the national education policy. When we talked about the national education policy, we mentioned that government is planning to scrap out the midday meals program. Now, rather than being a direct question asked on that, this has been an indirect question. If you know the basis of that question, you will be able to easily answer this question. Now here the question says, a researcher intends to explore the effect of possible factors. So it's important to note, these are possible factors for the organization of effective midday meals intervention. That means to understand whether the midday meals program was effective or not, you are trying to analyze the possible factors. So what you are trying to do is, you have the research or you have the midday meals program that is already there, and you are trying to find out the factors which will prove whether this program was fully efficient or not. So what you are trying to do is, this is a kind of ex post facto study. So after the fact, you have your data in the back. Based on that data, you are studying what could be the possible factors that could be responsible. So this is in no case a historical method, because under historical method what you do is, you understand what has happened in the past and you are trying to analyze only the past events. You don't work out what could be next based on that. So that is historical, and therefore historical cannot be the answer. Here there is nothing, there is no evidence which proves that it is either a survey or an experiment. So both of these could not be the correct answer. Therefore the answer would be the ex post facto research. Next question. Which of the following is an initial mandatory requirement to pursue a research? Now first of all, if I go to any supervisor and I want to say I want to work out a research project, what should be the most important or the preliminary thing that I should have in mind? The most important thing I should have in mind is a research question. Unless and until I have a research question in mind, I cannot work out on any of the topics. Once I have the research question, I will propound a hypothesis based on it. So the most important or the initial mandatory concept would be formulating a research question. Now next is, you have a passage. So I have broken this passage into two sets, and based on this passage you have 5 sets of questions. Now this passage was more or less a kind of direct passage, because I have marked those sections from which you will get the answer to the questions. So the question is, how can an organization enjoy competitive advantage sustainable over time? So here the answer would be by effective use of various instrumentalities. If I go on here, you can say, see this section, only an organization is able to combine, integrate and apply the resources in an effective manner that is not readily imitable by competitors. That means you are applying or you are using various instrumentalities, and based on that you are trying to enjoy competitive advantage. The next question is, what is required to ensure competitive advantages in a specific market? So the correct answer would be superior knowledge. If you go back here, you would have an organization with superior knowledge can achieve competitive advantage in market that appreciate the application of such knowledge. So again a very direct question. Then you have the passage also mentions about the trend of. So what is mentioned in the passage here is the global financial flow. You have here, in terms of capital for centuries, the day of gold coin and paper money restricted the financial flow, and this section explains the capital flow and is the correct answer for the next question. So you have, what does the author lay stress on the passage? Now what is the main idea of the passage is knowledge driven competitive advantage, which again very clearly given in the passage here. You have, in the knowledge based theory of firm, this idea is extended to various organizational knowledge as a recourse with at least the same level of power and importance. So again from this passage you can clearly say that knowledge based theory of the firm is important. Finally you have, which country enjoyed the advantage of automobile industry? The answer is Japan. That's from the very first line of the passage. And the last question is, why labor based competitive advantage of India and Singapore cannot be sustained in IT and service sector? The correct answer is because of the new emerging competitors, that is again based in the first section of the paragraph itself. So you have clearly mentioned, so this line clearly mentions that, however, an educational level and technical level continues to rise in other countries, India and Singapore enjoy a labor based competitive advantage and are likely to find such an advantage cannot be sustained through emergence of new competition. So this line clearly explains the answer. So you have the answers more or less very clear from the passage, the sections of the passage itself. So with this we cover the next set of questions. We will be covering the final set in the subsequent lesson. You can subscribe to our channel for any further updates. Have a good day ahead.